Hello, Darksiders. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day today. Now, in the last video I made, I talked about how the sequel trilogy has affected the Star Wars storyline, of which where it made the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy utterly pointless. But today, I want to take a moment on how the Star Wars sequel trilogy has affected the Star Wars brand, or more accurate, Disney as a whole, on how it's affected the Star Wars brand. So first, to get an understanding, we have to take a look down to memory lane. So think back to when The Force Awakens was being announced. Expectations, excitement, and sales were pretty high for Star Wars. It goes without saying that The Force Awakens was a box office success, and product was moving. I myself, as I'm sure you noticed by my channel picture, bought Kylo Ren's lightsaber, because personally, I did like the concept of the cross guards of the lightsaber. But, that doesn't mean I like Kylo Ren. Gotta make that clear. But anyway, sales were high, the products were going, the toys were good. But between somewhere post The Force Awakens up to modern day, sales for just Star Wars anything, toys, comics, and even books have just dropped dramatically. Or maybe not dramatically, but I bet any of you can go to your local Walmart or toy store and still find Rogue One action figures almost 2.5 years later, which should be saying a lot. So, before we get into more, let's think back. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, what was the last Star Wars item you bought? And who was it for? And what era did it revolve in? Well, the reality of the matter is, most of y'all probably said the prequel trilogy, or even the original trilogy. Let's face it, the prequel and the original trilogy is definitely more popular amongst the fan base. So, it's interesting to think about. Now, I also want you to think about something else. Think about the last time you went to a Walmart, especially when The Force Awakens was coming out. Think about how big the Star Wars section was, even in a Target, even in a Kroger. They had almost all of one aisle in the area dedicated to Star Wars, especially in Target where I live. There was just Star Wars merchandise everywhere. And at the time, it was selling. But then when Rogue One came out, they thought, okay, well, The Force Awakens sold pretty good. Maybe this one will. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Because as I said earlier, you could still go to your local store and find Rogue One action figures. I know for a fact I can. And then The Last Jedi happened. And The Last Jedi, it didn't sell. Now, I noticed this, as I'm sure most of y'all noticed this. But in the time frame from when Rogue One was released to The Last Jedi, it seemed that the aisles was shrinking a bit. Especially in my Walmart. Now, my Target, including today, still has a very decent size, but the amount or the quality of products have definitely been reduced. But we'll get into that. But so, the size of products that they were moving really decreased because the numbers just weren't there anymore. And Hasbro proved that the numbers weren't selling because Star Wars sales in the toys department was down. And it only got worse after The Last Jedi. And as most of y'all know, Solo was a box office failure. And I can still go to my Walmart and Target and such now and still find Solo action figures right there with The Last Jedi and the Rogue One action figures. Now, it has been very bad for sales of Star Wars right now. Because right now, which I'm sure many of you can confirm this, I went to 3 different Walmarts. And their shelf spacing was only about this big. This is incredibly small compared to what they used to have almost 3 to 4 years ago. As I said, that much shelf spacing for Star Wars. And most of it, there was some black action, like new Black Series action figures and those build your own lightsabers. But most of it was just holdover product that they could not get rid of from Rogue One and The Last Jedi. And as I said, this is everywhere. And as I said, even though my Target still has a sizable sizable area, they've definitely dropped down on how much product they carry. I mean, even in the Lego department, for example, I mean, Last Jedi Legos are, I can still find them too. So, with that being said, right now Disney Star Wars is not moving the merchandise. And I bet we're going to see the exact same thing when we get closer to the Rise of Skywalker and they start releasing, like lightsabers, action figures, and all this other stuff. I mean, it's just Disney Star Wars has not done a very good job branding the product. Now, obviously, we can guess why. I mean, when you attack your fans constantly, why are we going to spend our money to support your product? Well, most is we're not going to, because, well, you're telling us to basically screw off, so screw your product. So that's in the toys department. Now, I'm going to take a moment and talk about the books and comics areas. Now, I have been doing my best to at least read up with the comics, but as I said in a previous video, I've lost a lot of the desire to read them, especially involving Luke Skywalker, because I just find it disheartening personally, because I know what he becomes, and it is sad. But then we get into other books, like, example, the Aftermath trilogy. Wasn't that good of a trilogy? I mean, I bought the books hoping that I'd get to know more about how the Empire fell and the New Republic formed, which there is some of that in there. But it's very mediocre. And just, there's not a lot of book sales going on either. Now, a recent book that came out has been a story about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and I've heard good things about it so far, but the most thing I've heard about that book is there's an entire chapter dedicated to Jedi prophecies, and a lot of them sound like sequel-era heroes. So, as I said, it's just, I don't even know how to word it anymore. Disney Star Wars has not helped Star Wars brand very well. It did when The Last Jedi, when The Force Awakens came out, but something just dropped. The Last Jedi divided the fan base, and just people weren't interested. And I will say that Rogue One was a good movie, but a lot of the characters, you just couldn't get into their story arcs at all. Now, granted, they all died at the end, so you didn't really have to put much dedication into them. But at the same time, the pure fact that their action figures are still on the shelves 2+ years later, it should tell a lot, especially with the Solo action figures and the Last Jedi action figures. So, whether you support Disney Star Wars or you're against Disney Star Wars, you cannot deny the facts that the toys, the books, the comics, they are just not selling. I mean, they're not. And when we talk into a bit more branding, what was it? Star Wars Land that was released in Disney World or Disneyland? I can't remember which one. But I mean, a lot of the reports are coming in, and everything they have there is just sequel trilogy era stuff. Which, one, is not a very good decision. Like, I personally wouldn't have done that. There's so much more they could have done with the park, because especially where Star Wars is such an expansive universe, not just through like the books and the games, but the movies as well. But they chose to go with the sequel trilogy, and from what I'm hearing, a lot of the reports are just mediocre. Like, not a lot of people just aren't truly interested right now. And honestly, I like the idea of a Star Wars land, but I'm not about to spend a couple $1,000s just to be disappointed with a Star Wars land at a Disney park. Which I'm pretty sure a lot of you agree with me on that statement. The only thing that sounds really interesting to me is the fact that I could build and custom make my own lightsaber there. But I can go to, like, Ultima Sabers or Saber Forge, and I can probably pay the same amount and do the exact same thing. So, I mean, for right now, it sounds like the Star Wars land is not really going to gather a lot of attention with fans. So once again, bad branding. And it does make you kind of wonder, because Disney's all in it for making the money, and they know how to do theme parks. Disney World and Disneyland are fun parks, but they misfired with the Star Wars park. It really makes you wonder what exactly is going on, and what is going on behind the scenes of Lucasfilm and Disney, especially in the Star Wars branding department, because just nothing is selling right now. They're not getting the numbers that they should be, because even in the time frame after the prequel trilogy and all we really had was the Clone Wars, there was still a good amount of Star Wars toys being produced and selling, especially when the Black Series started coming out. I mean, the market was still there, but now just that market has dramatically decreased, and it's just, I don't know, bad movies and just directors, writers, presidents, CEOs just constantly attacking us. So for right now, and the way it's looking, I'm definitely going to say that Disney has been bad for Star Wars in the branding department. Well, that's all I have for you today, Darksiders. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to y'all later.